Gig Gab, episode 492 for Monday, July 28th, National Waterpark Day 2025. Greetings, folks, and welcome to Gig Gab, the show by, for, and about working musicians. Finally back here in Durham, New Hampshire. I'm Dave Hamilton, and our sponsors for today include the MLC.com, which you heard about with Dave Bogan in the last episode. The MLC collects all your streaming data and royalties. And Bzigo.com/discount/buzz10, where you can save 10% off a laser that will identify mosquitoes in your house. We'll talk more about both of those things in a little bit. Like I said, back here in Durham, New Hampshire, I'm Dave Hamilton, and our guest co-host for this episode is you. Yep, it's just me here today. We had so much email, comments, things from all of you that I figured it was time to focus on just you for an episode. And I was going to include some recent gig experiences of my own, because I know we all like to do that too. And then I was able to get Scott Smith, who we've had on the show before from the North County Band. He's coming on the show next week for us, for he and us, to talk about exactly that, our recent gigs and all that stuff. So this really is the mailbag episode that you all wanted. And the place where I'd like to start is going back to episode 487, so not that long ago. We had Corey Manske on, and we're talking about tracks and triggering things and being able to do it all from our iPads. Both Corey and I are of the mind that we don't really want to lug a laptop to a gig and have it there. Like, I've brought laptops to gigs before, but having it there on stage is just extra. The iPad is so much easier to set up, tear down. It's not quite as fragile as a laptop, and in many cases, not all, not quite as expensive as a laptop. So with that in mind, we set out to find an app to replace the now end-of-life app that Corey had told us about. And we have two suggestions from you folks. The first came from listener Alan, who recommended using Stage Traxx 3, which I know we've talked about here on the show before. Adam Moscow Wizard, I believe, uses Stage Traxx 3 to do a lot of his stuff. And Stage Traxx 3 looks like a worthy option here. And it wasn't just Alan who sent this in. Many of you, in fact, suggested Stage Traxx 3, but Alan was the first, so I just put you on the list, Alan. And it is available for iPhone, iPad, Mac OS, so you could do this on your Mac. You can have your Mac somewhere else and remote control it with an iPhone or an iPad, or you can use, maybe that's not the case. You can remote control it with AirTurn Bluetooth pedals at the very least. So there's that. It will also do multi-track playback. Certainly, I think most of us are aware that you can plug a multi-channel output interface into your Mac. You can also do that with your USB-C based iPad and iPhone, and I think I've even done it with a Lightning based iPhone in the past. But certainly USB-C based is going to be better because you get a little more bandwidth out of it. But the nice part about using a multi-track output is that if you're just using the stereo output of, say, your iPad, then you get one channel presumably for a click or a cue track, and one channel for whatever you're sending to either the monitors or front of house. By having more tracks, you can start to place things and even give a front of house engineer or you and your bandmates for your ears or for your monitors a place to mix things. So, and a way to mix things individually. So certainly a worthy suggestion here from Alan and all the rest of you for Stage Traxx 3 as one option. Listener Andy had our second suggestion here, and Andy wrote in and said, I would 100% use the app called Go Button. I think it will likely do everything that Corey was describing, and it is as solid as you would expect it to be. Go Button, I believe, comes from the same people who make QLab, which might be the reason we would expect it. Yes, it is. So that's why we would expect it to be reliable. Let's see. Continuing here, he says, I haven't used it a ton because I just use a laptop, but I have absolutely used it and been happy with it. Figure 53, the company behind it, provides real tech support. So there you go. Another option, if Go Button isn't flexible enough, is to use QLab on a Mac that lives in a rack or off stage and trigger it with QLab Remote on an iPad. That can do very complex things, including having tracks that have multiple vamps that work correctly. If you set a region that loops infinitely if you like, and then you fire a D-vamp cue, which means that the next time it comes back around to the end of the vamp, it will keep playing. You can have as many of those in a single track as you would like. I have used that with QLab in theater shows. Now, I say I've used it. I've been part of the process that uses it. I was not the one that triggered it. It was our MD Julius who was triggering that while playing keys. But having those vamps in there and all those things are definitely something to consider if that's part of how your show needs to work. So Go Button from the folks who make QLab. Thanks Andy for suggesting that. Yeah, I'm looking to see here. If it were me, Andy says I'd probably be okay using a headphone out from an iPad for a click. But if it's going into the PA, oh yeah, this is a good part. This is a good thing to discuss. If it's going into a PA, I'd feel better with a class-compliant USB audio device with its own balanced outputs. I'm going to agree with this. I have been using the click track from forScore on my iPad, and it works fine. And I've been using it with the headphone out on my iPad, and it works fine. However, it is a noisy output. So what I've had to do, and it requires a lot of sort of tweaking to the gain structure. So the first thing I have to do is crank the gain on the mixer as high as I can. But because it's a noisy output, now I have to put a noise gate on there so that I'm not just hearing hum in my ears or in our ears all night for the click. And so, but it's pretty easy because the click itself is a very transient signal, meaning it comes and goes very quickly. It's like a drum hit, because that's kind of the whole idea, right? So you got click, click, and that means the gate's opening when it clicks and closing very, very quickly when it's finished clicking. And so that part works. But even with that, with the gain cranked and the gate there, the signal isn't quite as loud as I would like it to be, even with the volume cranked on the iPad. So Andy's idea of using a USB output device with its own balanced outputs is a very, very good one, even if you're only just using one channel of the output. But again, like we mentioned when discussing Stage Traxx, having more outputs and an app that can use those now becomes even more valuable and more flexible and all those things. So that might be another option for us, and certainly two good options for folks who want to do that sort of thing and do it from our iPads. So thank you to Alan and Andy and everybody else who wrote in with all of that stuff. We have some Gig Gab to talk through, and I love Gig Gab. I know we all love Gig Gab. Listener Andy says, I was listening to an old episode, and you were talking about pile microphones. Yeah, during the COVID lockdowns, I think it was during COVID lockdowns, Paul and I were experimenting with a lot of different microphones. And for years, I had been seeing the Pyle, Pyle, set of drum mics for, $99 for, I don't know, 8 mics or something. And I spent the $99 because I had to know, are these a piece of crap? Are they great? Are they something in between? And it was a worthy experiment for $99 because now 5 years later, most of those microphones, certainly the Tom microphones, remain on my Toms in the kit here in the studio. They work really, really well. Now, to answer the question, do they work well? Yes, I just said that. To answer the other question, are they a piece of crap? Yes. Both of these things can be true. The microphones themselves sound great. The clips, the mounts that exist for them are not great. They're fine when set up once in my studio and have lived that way for, 5, going on 6 years, probably 5 years at this point. And that's fine. But if I had to take these off of my drums and put them on at, on and off at every gig, I don't think they would have lasted 6 months, let alone, almost 6 years or 5 years or whatever it is. So Andy says, in hearing about the Pyle mics, I've used their ultralight headsets and they are shockingly good for the $25. He says, though I have found the ones from PolsenAudio.com, Polsen, are the same money, very similar sound, and a hotter signal. He says, I've used them a ton in situations where I need something that is effectively disposable. So this is at PolsenAudio.com, and they have microphones and other things. But nice to know that the microphones sound good, because that really is the key there. And Andy says, I always carry a couple of spares, but so far have rarely used them. And that's the nice part about inexpensive mics, is you can keep them around for spares. So thank you for that nice little introduction to Gear Gab. It's always nice to talk about inexpensive gear, because sometimes we get to talking about expensive gear. I mentioned on a recent episode that I had used the May internal mounting kit to mount the Behringer BA 19A, the boundary mic inside of my Gretsch Brooklyn bass drum. And every front of house engineer that has experienced this thing in recent months has been blown away by it. Like, every one of them comes up and says, man, what kind of boundary mic is that in there? And they're like, is it the Sennheiser? Is it the Shure? Both of which are, in the $200 range. And it's like, no, it's the Behringer BA 19A, the $40 to $60 microphone that kind of works the same and just has such a great feel and sound to it. You get a lot of low end out of it while still getting the articulation of the high end. Really blown away. Now, I want to share that the May monorail works great. And I think when I talked about it here on the show, we were still coming up with a solution for how to get the cable from the microphone out of the drum. Now, I happen to choose to use a hole, a port, that I've cut into the resonant head of the bass drum. And I put a kick port in those, not for the cable, but just because I really like how the kick port lowers the fundamental of the drum. It's really kind of a great thing, and I have them in both of my gigging bass drums for sure. I will put a link to the kick port in the show notes. So for the initially I was just using a cable an XLR cable that I ran through the port in the front of the drum and plugged it into the microphone. It was good to go. And I was trying to figure out, okay, what's the right answer for getting this out? Now, May Microphones has a couple of different options for cables to get things out of, like a vent hole in the drum or something. But the vent hole on the round badge of the Gretsch Brooklyn drum set is very, very narrow compared to what most of them are. And it made it tricky to get things in or out of there. And then the question was, where does what it would do is you kind of plug it into the microphone and then you would have an XLR jack on the outside of the drum, and theirs is magnetic. So I was like, well, there's nowhere really magnetic to leave it on the bass drum, so it would just be kind of loose hanging out of there, and you could sort of, put it on the rim of like a nearby tom or something. But to me, that wasn't the most portable option. I started looking at other things, and the folks at Kelly SHU, who make their own internal mounting, their own internal mounts, which are kind of shock mounts, self-fit into a drum. They have what they call the Kelly SHU PLUGZ, PLUGZ. And of course, being that it's just a normal microphone in there, it doesn't really matter what mount you've used. And so this works fine with any mount, including the Kelly mount. But the Kelly SHU PLUGZ work great. Fits right through the round badge vent hole on the drum, and then also cleverly links. You temporarily remove one of the why can't I think about it? The tuning pegs from the drum, right? You remove that, and it fits inside that. So now you've got this mounted permanently on the rim of the drum, and you're good to go. And you can still tune it just fine. And it doesn't matter if it's a if it uses a drum key or not. Some bass drums have like self-tunable things, and others require drum keys, and that's all fine. So that is my solution for that, and it's been working out really, really well. So thank you to everybody that kind of sent in advice. I know we musicians, we love to just come up with what it's not that we love to. I suppose part of us we love to, but we have to come up with clever solutions for scenarios that to get our gear to work in a gig scenario, in a gig situation. And so that's what we do. Speaking of gear that one can use in a gig situation, there's been a lot of talk of splitter snakes on this show, and for good reason. Everybody that finally uses one, including me, seems to love them. I found the Proreck splitter snake, but there are, and it's very, very affordable, less than $200 for a 16-channel splitter snake, and it allows you to plug all your inputs into the front of it, and then there's splits that go either direction on the back of it, one to your mixer for your ears, and one to front of house for them to do whatever they want. And Drew had a comment about upgrading without spending an arm and a leg. He says, I wanted to express my satisfaction with the 20-channel CBT branded, so a much higher end brand, CBT branded mic splitter that I got used on Reverb a few years ago for just $250. I love a few things about it. It's 20 channels, but it only takes up 2 rack spaces and is very shallow. So it fits nicely on the opposite side of the 2-sided travel rack for my digital board. Oh, that's really nice. So you've got your board on one side of the rack and the split snake on the other, and they use an Allen and Heath QUSB. It says it also has W2 multi-pin connectors, so the extra weight of the split tails are not always there. The split tails are connected with these W2 multi-pin connectors. So he says, when I don't need to split for a gig, I don't have to bring the extra weight of those split tails. Those split tails can be fairly heavy because in this case, you've got 2 sets of 20 XLRs, and even if one of them is relatively short, say 5 feet to get to your mixer, the other one's got to be, 15, 20 feet, or maybe longer if you choose, to get to another mixer. The other nice thing about having the W2 connectors is you could have different lengths if you do enough gigging where having different lengths of those would actually matter. He says, this particular model does not have ground lifts or transformers, but I rarely have a problem with a ground buzz or a phantom power issue. He says, I carry a few inline filters in my just in case. Bottom line, he says, I agree with you. Once you go to a splitter snake and keep control of your IEM mixes, there is no going back. And I would agree. Yes, absolutely. I think everybody kind of agrees with that. So thank you for that, Drew. Speaking of Proreck, again, being the brand of Splitter Snake that I found that we've been using in Casual Gravity, and it's been working great. After I talked about it here on the show, of course, as always, I let the brand know that we discussed them on the show, and that sometimes, and in this case did, lead to a conversation. And the folks at Proreck don't just make Splitter Snakes, they make other things, and they are all kind of in this affordable range. And they told me about something. And this is the Proreck Club 6000, which is a dual subwoofer, 15-inch subwoofer, dual, with four line arrays that mount on poles above these subwoofers. So you got two subwoofers that in theory would be put stage left and stage right for front of house, and then poles coming up from each of them, and each of those poles having two line array style speakers on the top of them. We've all seen setups like this before, but I had never seen one that cost less than $700 all in. So when they told me about this and said, you should test this out, I thought, well, I think you're right. Because how could it be that this would even work for $700 or less? And so I did. So I got this thing. And it's called the Proreck Club 6000 because it has, I think it's 6,000 watts. I thought it was 8,000 watts, but maybe it's 6,000 continuous or something like that. But anyway, so what's interesting about this is everything runs, only one of the speakers, one of the subwoofers is powered and has all the amplifiers for all the other speakers, which makes life really easy because you run signal from your mixing console to the front of the stage and plug it all in on one side, and then from there the Proreck Club 6000 sort of takes care of itself. It comes with all the cables to get from that one subwoofer to everything else. So a cable to go across the stage to the other subwoofer, and then cables to go up to the line array speakers. And I was shocked. I used this for an outdoor gig. Fling did a show with another band, and we actually chose to play first. In the end, I would have chosen to play second, not because of the order of operations for any egotistical reasons, but I would have loved to have gotten this system really tuned up before Fling played, but that's not how it worked. Still, we were able to get it fairly tuned up, and then after Fling played, I mixed front of house for this other band that we worked with, the Time Bandits, and really was able to dial this thing in. Out of the gate, it had it was a little bit harsh. The low end was fine. The high end was just a little bit bitey. But EQ and some kind of dialing in of where there's a crossover in the system, the Proreck system, that I kind of dialed in the right way. Learning how to drive the system, you kind of drive it with a little more signal than you would otherwise think you would drive this kind of thing with. But it's super clear. And once I kind of found the sweet spot for where the crossover for the subwoofer cuts in, and then just some general EQ that I was sending to it from my front of house mixer, it had a really warm sound, but super clear, like vocals, everything just comes through so crystal clear. And because these things are, these line array style speakers, you really get to dial in exactly where the sound is going to go. It was a fairly large outdoor venue that we played at, and I think 15 feet from the stage, 20 feet from the stage, I had it pushing about 95 dB, which is, outdoors, that's quite a bit and more than enough. And then, another 20 feet back, it was over 80 dB. So like maybe actually 30 feet back was another 80 dB. It was a little bit over 80 dB. And that was fine. Like I could have gone louder, but I didn't want to. The sound was great. The sound was clear. People were up and dancing. So there was enough subwoofer. There was enough thump from the system to get the air moving in an outdoor environment. Obviously, indoors, you get reflections that are both a blessing and a curse, as we all know. But certainly, you're getting those reflections, and the blessing part of them is that they give you more sound, right? Because it's all coming back. It's not just going out in the air and never coming back. So I was really impressed with this thing for $700. I've only used it at that one gig, and it's less than $700. Currently on their website, $689.99, but I think you can find it on Best Buy for even less. So really interesting. I've used it for the one gig. I would trust it to use it again. This first gig, of course, I brought this and then had Russ and Fling bring other stuff too, just in case. But we didn't need it just in case, which was a great thing. So I'm really blown away by how well that thing worked. It's not what I expected, but that's okay. We have a lot more in the mailbag. I think that kind of wraps up Gear Gab. Well, maybe. No, it definitely doesn't. But we have some other stuff in the mailbag that sort of addresses some different topics that we've covered in recent months that I want to get to. The next thing that I want to get to is our sponsors. Because I love lasers on stage. And you can have one in your bedroom hunting mosquitoes. Meet our sponsor, Bzigo, the world's first AI-powered mosquito detector. This is a sleek little device that uses computer vision to scan your room 24/7, find mosquitoes in real time, and mark them with an eye-safe laser. That's right. No more waving your phone flashlight like you're chasing ghosts. When Bzigo sees a mosquito land, it literally points a laser at it. You get an app notification on your phone, and boom, target acquired. It works in pitch black thanks to night vision. And best of all, no sprays, no chemicals, no weird plug-in smell. Just pure, nerdy, gig-level tech keeping your nights itch-free. And yeah, you could name it like Mosquito Monitor 3000, and, because it's always performing, right? And we should always be sleeping. So stop losing sleep over mosquitoes. Take back your nights with Bzigo. Go to Bzigo.com/discount/buzz10 and save 10% off. That's Bzigo.com/discount/buzz10 and use the code BUZZ10 to get 10% off. We'll put that in the show notes to make it easy for you too. Say goodbye to itchy bites and sleepless nights. Thank you, Bzigo, for sponsoring this episode. And hey, if you're a songwriter, a music publisher, or really anyone managing any kind of music rights, we've got one word for you. It's money, specifically your money. And that's where our sponsor, the MLC, the Mechanical Licensing Collective, comes in. They are a nonprofit that tracks your U.S. streaming royalties from platforms like Spotify and Apple Music, matches the money to you, and pays it out. It's like the royalty ninja you didn't know you needed, sneaking through your data, tracking every stream, and depositing cash you've already earned. Over $3 billion has already been distributed to over 55,000 members. And the best part, membership is completely free. If your songs are out there streaming, there might already be money with your name on it, just waiting to be claimed. Don't leave it behind like a forgotten mic cable at loadout. And you want to hear how it really works? Check out last week's episode 491 when Dave Bogan from the MLC joined and helped explain everything. Like, my mind was blown learning about how all the licensing and royalties work and all that stuff. Visit themlc.com to sign up for free, because if you're writing, recording, and of course always performing, then you should always be getting paid too. That's themlc.com. Go get your money, and our thanks to the MLC for sponsoring this episode. All right, let's answer some questions. But first we'll ask, Brian asks the question. He says, in a recent episode, you alluded to the possibility that some microphones pass sound signals more robustly than other microphones, and his interpretation was that they might have a higher internal gain, so to speak. He says, my band's lead singer uses a Telefunken M80 vocal mic, but despite being generally considered a high-quality mic, he has a hard time being heard through the PA. Gain, they're using an X-Air 18. The gain is jacked on this channel, as is his fader, and his mic technique seems fine. He says, I think the main problem is he is not a very powerful singer, but I also suspect the mic itself may not pass the signal as robustly as some other vocal mics might. Do you have any recommendations about some vocal mics in the $250 or less range that might pass vocal signals relatively strongly that we could try? He says we have SM58s and a Beta 56 that we will try. Perhaps we will have to resort to an inline amplifier of some kind, but I also appreciate any recommendations. And Brian is a fellow singing drummer. So this is a great question. And yes, Brian, you have grokked the concept. The way I would say it is that some mics require more gain from the console, from the preamp, than others. So yes, the mics, some mics would have more internal gain or less internal gain than others, so to speak. That said, the Telefunken M80 and M8X series is one of the highest gain vocal mics that I've found. It is not a mic that I prefer to sing into, and that's simply because of the pickup pattern on it. I find that I have to sing right into that mic, whereas like the mic that I like to use, the Heil microphones, the PR31BW is the one that I use, but that one I have a little bit more fudge factor with it, if you will. I've just got a bigger bubble to sing into, but that mic is that can be a good thing, right? You get good off-axis rejection with the Telefunken M80, and for that reason, a lot of front of house engineers and monitor engineers really like that microphone because it is very directional. And I've played some clubs where the engineer asks if we will all use them because of, maybe some other issues or there's some reflections or something. And those mics do a great job at sort of rejecting all of that stuff. But that mic also activates best with a singer who can project into that capsule. And my way of describing what that's like is singing into that mic to me feels like the capsule is all the way at the other end of like the back end of the microphone. That's not true, but that's how it feels singing into it. So you have to carefully like sing down into the tube to get it to activate. I'm a pretty powerful projector as a singer, which I learned from years of singing behind the drums without really any monitors. And I had to be louder than a snare drum was, a foot and a half away from the snare drum. But yeah, like that mic should be one of the higher gain microphones that you're going to find out there. And the idea that you have the gain cranked on the console and the fader all the way up tells me that something is wrong. Now, it really could be that he doesn't project enough for that microphone to work well for him. That's entirely possible. It's also possible that you've got a bad cable in the mix. It's also possible that that particular microphone is not up to snuff with where a Telefunken M80 should be. So it's worth ruling some of that out, comparing it to another M80 and that sort of thing, because that seems very atypical of the M80. But if in fact it is decided that that microphone is not the right microphone for him, yeah, I don't know that a 58 would be, but certainly you've got one, so try it. Like that's the beauty of all of this is microphones and instruments, be it a voice, a human voice or otherwise, or a drum or a guitar or a guitar amp. The signal source and the EQ device that is capturing it, aka the microphone, need to be matched, and it takes some trial and error to find out, to learn. So try the 58. You've got it. Try your Beta 56. If you might find that that's the right mic for him. I would certainly throw the Heil PR37 into the mix here. That's one of my go-to vocal microphones these days. And I think, it's certainly worth trying especially for someone that might not have the same projection as that they might need to make that Telefunken really sing, so to speak. But yeah, the Heil PR37, it's in that 250, 260, 270 range, depending. You can find it. But there's also the Heil PR35. I like the 37 a little bit better. It's got a little bit more sparkle on the high end, a little bit more presence, and that you might find to be beneficial for someone like you described your singer to be. So that would be one other microphone. And then finally, I would recommend checking out the Earthworks SR117 as well. It's a condenser mic, so you're going to you're going to need phantom power for it. The rest of the microphones that we've discussed here are not phantom power required, but that's fine. Your mixer has phantom power, so that's not going to be an issue. But I'm trying to find the Earthwork on a web page for this. There doesn't seem to be an Amazon listing for this that's not in, say, German or something. But I found, of course, the listing at Earthworks website, and it is a great microphone. I've used it. It picks up a little bit more of the kind of ambient sound that than you might otherwise get with a dynamic microphone. But it's still built to be a handheld vocal mic, so it's not just picking up everything. It's got a tight pattern on it, and depending on the singer and all of that stuff, the SR117 can be great. The SR117 also sounds great on snare drums. So if you, it's not a bad thing to have in your arsenal. So hopefully at least one of those options works out. And I think the SR117 Earthworks says it's $199 on direct from them. So that's probably the highest price you'll pay, and you might be able to find it for a little bit less at, say, Sweetwater or something like that too. But yeah, obviously check out your favorite sources. But yeah, really good mics. Any one of these is going to be considered a high quality microphone, and the M80 is also considered a high quality microphone. It just depends on what's going to work for your singer. But make sure that M80 is not malfunctioning, or that something in the signal chain is not malfunctioning, because like I said, it's just a little weird that that would be happening. It doesn't, what you're describing doesn't sound right. So anyway, moving on as we do here in Gig Gab land. The next question, actually, it's not a question, it's a note that comes from listener Christine. And Christine says, my name's Christine DeMeo, and I'm a singer-songwriter live looping artist. I've been listening to the show for a while, and I really enjoy it. I just wanted to share with you, in response to your question about recording and live streaming your gigs, that I've used a few different methods to record my gigs. I used to use the Zoom H8, but now I use the Zoom AMS 44 for all of my live streams and live recordings. It sits on my pedal board, and I love it. And she sent along a video that I'll put a link to in the show notes that Christine has on her YouTube channel that shows her setup, and then also a rundown of her pedal board. So both of these things get fun and nerdy and some great stuff. But yeah, thank you, Christine. That Zoom AMS 44, really interesting. And she goes through all the details of it, but it really allows you to have, for what it is, it's like $170 on Amazon. It might be, even less somewhere else. You've got, 4 different inputs, and you can mix them in different ways so that you really are, it has a lot more flexibility than you might think. So this kind of thing, especially if you're doing some mixing of different instruments that you want to send maybe a different mix to your live stream than you might want to send to, say, your ears or, front of house or whatever. This is an interesting little thing, and it's compact. You'll see how it sits right on her pedal board when you take a look at that video. And like I said, I'll put a link to that in the show notes. So thank you for that, Christine. And it's great to have you as a listener here, too. Amazing stuff. Moving on. I had all my notes up, and now they're gone. We got a note from someone that I will call Listener X because, I am happy to share what might be my own biases and unpopular opinions. I never want to out someone else. But Listener X says, I went to see a Led Zeppelin tribute band, and I knew that I wasn't going to like it as much as I could when the drummer started the show by beginning the intro to Rock and Roll on beat 1 rather than the end of 3. Says, I know you and Paul talked about this years ago, but to me, that was definitely strike one. As the professor Neil Peart would say, I want people to know that care has been taken. And Listener X says, I suspect you and I share the same critical view on stuff like that. Yeah, I do, obviously. If you've listened long enough, you know that, I have my opinions too. I really try not to be that folded armed musician who sits in the back and judges everything. There is the inner judge that judges myself, and also, judges everything else. That's there all the time, of course. But in parallel to that, I am often more important than that, certainly in the moment, is the part of me that just enjoys the show, either the show that I'm playing or the show that I am there to watch. And so I can usually, let that enjoyment part be the louder voice in my head. But there are some things that it's just like, and I think Listener X here said it right. I want people to know that care has been taken. And when I see somebody on stage that will start, say, Rock and Roll on beat 1 versus the end of 3, and I know that I might be the only one in the room that recognizes that so this is a me thing. I get it, but I know that we're all probably not alone in this. Or, Take It Easy from the Eagles starts on the end of 4, and that's how that intro works. Drive My Car also starts on the end of 4. I think those were the 3 that Paul and I talked about years ago. Oh, Glory Days by that guy Bruce Springsteen that Paul told me about once. That guitar groove starts on the end of 1. It's actually simpler than but all of these are simpler than they sound. But that one, there's a weird turnaround that happens in the intro because the first measure is on the end of 1, and then from when the drums, right? It comes in on the end of 1, the first guitar hit, and then after that, he's playing 1 and on every turnaround, and that's when the kick drum comes in and the snare comes in and the whole intro, and then it's woo, we're off to the races. Great song, by the way. All of those songs sound like they start in one place, and then it turns out they start in other. Sting's got some songs that are brilliantly turned upside down like that too, but you don't even realize it until you get to the chorus, and it's like, oh, what happened? But yes, care must be taken, and I definitely subscribe to that. When I'm on stage, I like to, and I know most people won't notice nor care, but I want to know for myself that care has been taken, and if there happens to be someone in the room that also notices, even better. But I do it for me. So, yeah, I'm with you on this. I'm not necessarily proud of it, but I don't know. I don't know. It's a good thing. Let us know. Let me know. What are your thoughts on this? Feedback at giggabpodcast.com. And we'll include it in another mailbag episode. We're doing more and more of these things as it turns out. Gregory has a question here. He asked, how does one go about getting permission to do covers? I could have sworn that artists could get ASCAP or BMI licenses for coverage, but it seems it's only the venues that can. I've seen the rate tables, etc. But aside from live performance, how does one get permission from the original artist to do a recorded cover. I found the artist's booking agent, but I'm not sure my message will get where it needs. Does anyone have experience with the latter part of this? And I thought this was a perfect, I almost teed this up last week when we had Dave Bogan on from the MLC, but Dave really did give us an answer to this question. And the answer is that once a song has been released through a PRO, performance rights organization, the artist has already agreed to a compulsory mechanical license, meaning that they have already given permission for people to record and release covers of this. They still get paid royalties on your cover. That rate is also fixed, but they can't stop you from doing it. If you like, you can reach out to them and get their blessing for your cover, and that could actually work out to your benefit, right? If they like what you've done, if they like the twist you've done on it, then maybe they'll promote it, and it could be a good thing for everybody. But as Dave pointed out last week, agencies like Harry Fox simplify that process. You fill out a form with details about your cover, you pay the statutory fee, and you're set. This is designed to be accessible. There's minimal hassle. And again, the original artist, assuming that they have released their song through an ASCAP or a BMI or a CSAC, they have already agreed to this compulsory license. So that's the compulsory mechanical license, not a compulsory grand rights license. That's all very, very different. And we talked about that last week. Fascinating conversation. I understood prior to going into that episode, I think I understood about 20% of it, as evidenced by my naive questions. And I was happy to have them finally answered by someone who really, really understood. So thank you again today for doing that. Thanks to Gregory for the question here. But yeah, you just, Harry Fox Agency would probably be the place to start. And I'll put a link to them in the show notes, but that they've been around for a long time and they are one of the ones that it's just harryfox.com. So, yep. Related to that, Thomas has a question. He says, have you ever done a show about YouTube blocking the posting of cover bands wanting to post their promo videos? You know, you've got a cover of somebody else's song. YouTube sometimes blocks it, and sometimes those blocks are just, you get a note saying, hey, any advertising revenue from this video is going to go to the original rights holder. This is not, there's no strike against you. Other times there is a strike against you. You don't really, it's hard to know what's going on. And what's going on here is sort of the question that Thomas asks. These are different things because there's video content going along with them. And so all of these compulsory licenses don't necessarily, it gets to be a gray area, and sometimes it's not so gray. Sometimes it's very clear that that the artist has not agreed to a compulsory, license for what it is you are doing. And it really is individual. I know some folks some artists are very tight about this stuff. Some are not. And it really depends on the artist and how controlling they are being over their stuff. And so unfortunately, the only thing that you can do is kind of test it and find out. I haven't found a definitive resource. If somebody does know of one where it's like, oh yeah, don't post covers by this band, but the rest of these bands are fine, please let us know. We'll share, of course, feedback at giggabpodcast.com. That would be great. But yeah, most of the time you're not going to get a copyright violation, though. What I've experienced are the first thing that I described, where you are simply getting a note saying, we are going to put ads in this video, and you will get exactly none of the revenue from that. And and then at that point you can choose to take your video down if you don't like that, or cut out that part of your video, or at least that part of the audio of your video, so that you don't run afoul of this, or that nobody else gets to put their hands in that particular pie. But yeah, YouTube will let you know. But very rare. We've posted, tons of cover videos over the years, and I can't remember ever getting an actual violation. for this. But for sure, those are things to pay attention to. At the very least, you want to make sure that whoever in your band, if it's not you, that's managing your YouTube account really pays attention to those notes that come in from YouTube in a timely fashion. Because if you don't, and there is something in there that you need to respond to and you don't respond in time, that makes it even worse. So please pay attention to that stuff. But yeah, feedback at giggabpodcast.com. Love to hear from you. I know the last solo episode I did, I sung the praises of using AirPods Pro Gen 2 as active earplugs. I have since found out, I think that Westone had or has a set of active earplugs that were like, I don't know, more than double the price of what AirPods Pro are now. But maybe it wasn't Westone. I'm looking here. But anyway, there was someone out there that made active earplugs for a little bit, but they were like $500 and didn't really land as well as we would like. AirPods Pro Gen 2 has just been getting better and better. I know you need to have an iPhone with them so that if you're not an iPhone user, then suddenly the price, the seemingly low price of AirPods Pro does not really settle in. Because I think in order to use the active earplugs feature, you can't just use them with any Bluetooth source. Like I think you need an iPhone to be able to turn that on and tune that. I could be wrong. Again, feedback at giggabpodcast.com. But I've used them recently over the last couple of months and since the feature came out in the fall. And they're my favorite earplugs to use. Hands down. Can't recommend it enough. It's amazing how I hope somebody else comes out with active earplugs. Like I hope this becomes a market of things that we can all choose from and pick the ones that fit best and work best for each of us, because obviously all of our ears are different. If you are an AirPods user and aren't entirely happy with how they fit in your ears, check on Amazon for third-party replacement tips, because I did that and it made a huge difference for me. I do not like the tips that came with the AirPods Pro Gen 2 or really any other AirPods that have come out. But the third-party tips, I think I've got some that are basically those comply tips, and those have been working phenomenally well for me. So definitely keep that in mind. I think that's what I got. I think there's nothing else. Thanks for hanging out. Next week, Scott Smith will be back. We'll be talking about all our recent gigs and our recent health stuff. I know I've alluded to it. I meant to say something earlier on in the episode. We'll definitely talk about it next week. But the health mystery that I kind of started talking about back when we had Chinner Winstead on turns out to have been Lyme disease. And thankfully, my doctor symptomatically diagnosed it and got me on doxycycline, which is the antibiotics that are known to be the sort of primary line of defense treatment attack, if you will, for Lyme disease. And I've been on that for over 2 weeks now, and it has made a huge difference. So I think we got ahead of this before it got its hooks too deep into me, and we're getting it out. So yeah, I've been feeling like so much better. So this will hopefully just be a blip in the rearview mirror. But thank you to everybody who wrote in and asked to see how I was doing. I am thankfully doing so much better now. So yeah, thanks for hanging out again. Feedback at giggabpodcast.com, but also visit giggabpodcast.com and sign up for our mailing list. You get all of the show notes delivered straight to your inbox. So all the things that we talk about, I put links in for every single chapter that's in there and device we talk about and all the gear gab. So you can just have that delivered to your inbox. We don't spam you. We don't sell your name. It's me and Sadie on the team here that get to see the list of all of you. And that's it. Nobody else. So, and that will, I'll go. It's not going to be a limb. I'm not going to sell your name. It's just I get to decide, and I'm not going to do it. So it's just not going to happen. There you go. I own the show. Turns out. So it's not like you're safe. So go do that, and then we have an Instagram too that I know a lot of you now are signed up for. That's been growing very, very nicely in recent months. And Sadie's been doing a great job putting little clips and stuff out there from the episodes and highlights things that you might have missed, kind of glossed over in the episode. And if you're following us on Instagram, you'll get kind of those little tidbits, those little reminders coming back in bite-sized form. So subscribe to that. Thanks for hanging out. And yeah, thank you. I love that we still get to do this together, and here we are in our 11th year, always evolving, always having fun, always being judgmental, well, sometimes. And what's the other thing? Oh yeah, always be performing. See you next week. Later.